We continue now at the top of Daf Ches Amud Aleph and Meseches Nedarim. This is Nedarim Daf 28a. The Mishnah here continues that Beis Shammai say chutz mi b'shvua. You're not allowed to take this kind of a neder when it comes to a shvua. Neder is okay. A shvua would not be okay. As the Mefarish over here says, chutz mi b'shvua shelo yomar. A person cannot say yeyasru perush ba'olam olai. The fruits of the world should be usher to me b'shvua with a shvua imeinon shel truma if they are not of truma. In other words, you can do that as a neder. Let's say you're trying to get away from the tax collectors, etc. But you're not allowed to do it in the form of a shvua. Only in the form of a neder is allowed. And the Mishnah continues with Beis Hillel Omer, but Beis Hillel say, no, af b'shvua, you can even do this as a shvua, it doesn't have to be a neder. And similarly, the Mishnah continues, Beis Shammai Omer and Beis Shammai say, lo yiftach lo b'neder. He can't offer him in the first place to take this neder. As the Mefarish over here says, lo yiftach lo b'nederim halistim enu mazkiko sheyodor, lo yiftach lehu bi'atzmo. If the robbers, or again the tax collectors, whoever it is, if they're not forcing him to take this neder, so he can't offer to take this neder on his own. Beis Hillel Omer, but Beis Hillel say, no, af yiftach lo, he can even offer on his own to do this neder. They're trying to collect from him, and he can say this is, he could take a neder, this is of truma, etc., in order to get out of having to give the money. And the Gemara continues, Beis Shammai Omer and Beis Shammai say, Ba'meshehu mediro, with that which he made the neder. And the Mefarish over here says, Ba'meshehu mediro bilvad yoder, v'lo b'davar achar k'de Mefarish. In other words, it has to be only with the thing that the tax collectors or the robbers, that thing which they want, that you can take the neder, and then the neder will not apply. Everything will be mutter. But anything outside, if you add anything into the neder, any other items which the tax collectors, the robbers, are not after, so then that will not be included in the heter. But Beis Hillel say, Af b'mesha eno madiru, even in things which he's not making him take the neder in, even that, if he includes other things in the neder, all of those nedarim will be mutter. Ketzad how so? Amar lo emor konim ishti nenisli. For example, let's say he says to him, say that there's a konim on my wife that she shouldn't get any benefit from me. V'yamar, and then the person says konim ishti uvonai neninli. He adds in not only his wife, but he says my wife and my son also will not derive benefit from me. So he's throwing in his son. So Beis Shammai Omer and Beis Shammai say ishto muteres uvona vasurin. Again, Beis Shammai say it only applies to the wife, the heter. So his wife is mutter. The neder does not apply to the wife, but the neder still applies to his sons. They are still prohibited. Beis Hillel Omer, but Beis Hillel say elu ve'elu mutarin, that both of them are going to be mutter. He threw in his sons into that neder, and it is a mutter neder, and therefore it is not a problem. Again, it's all cases of nidrei onsin. These are nedarim that are taken based on factors that are outside of the person's control. And the Gemara says, V'amar Shmuel, but didn't Shmuel say, Dino de Malchusa Dina, that the law of the land is the land? The Mefarish over here explains, Dino de Malchusa Dina, V'lav nidrei onsin ninhu. This is not really an onus over here. It's not something out of control that he's trying to get out of. V'amai nojin l'muchsin l'havriach hamecha shel malchus. This is a government collecting taxes. They have a right to collect the taxes. So why is he taking this kind of a neder and saying, oh, it's a nidrei onsin, so therefore it should be a mutter neder, I'm doing this to avoid paying the taxes? The halach is you have to pay the taxes because of Dino de Malchusa Dina. And the Gemara answers, Amar Rav China, no Amar Rav Kahana, Amar Shmuel. Rav China says that Rav Kahana says that Shmuel says, B'muchas she'ein lo kitzur. We're talking about a muchas, a tax collector, where there is no limit to what he's going to collect. The Mefarish over here says, she'ein lo kitzur, shenotel kol ma sherotz. He takes whatever he wants. Therefore, this kind of tax collection is not just, and therefore you're allowed to take this neder, and it's considered in the category of nidrei onsin in order to avoid having to pay this tax. Dvei Rabbi Yanai says, "B'muchas ha'omen me'elav." We're talking about a tax collector who's doing this on his own. He's not really working for the government, and so therefore, again, you can use this neder in order to get away from having to pay this tax, and it will be considered nidrei onsin, and the neder will not be binding. And the Gemara continues at the two dots, Shehein shel beis hamelech v'afal pi she'einon shel beis hamelech. Again, case of the Mishnah was, he's taking a neder, he's saying that this really belongs to the house of the king, and really it doesn't belong to the house of the king. Again, that was another case of nidrei onsin, where the neder does not apply. And the Gemara says, Heichi neder, well, how exactly is he making this neder? In other words, what is the formulation of this neder, where he's making a neder and saying that this really belongs to the king? Amar Rav Amram, so Rav Amram says, Amar Rav, that Rav says, B'yomer, he says as follows, Yeyasru peros ha'olam alai, the fruits of the world should be prohibited to me, im einon shel beis hamelech, if they do not belong to the house of the king. That's how he should phrase it. But the Gemara says, 1 second, Kevan da'amar yeyasru, the moment he says that the fruits of the world should be asr, itzru alai, kol perei alma, isn't all the fruits of the world, doesn't it all become asr to him? And so the Gemara answers, he has to phrase it as follows. Bi Omer Hayom, what he says is that the peiros of the world should be usher to me only today. So therefore the prohibition on the fruits, for him to have a prohibition to the fruits, that will only apply for today and it won't apply going forward. But the Gemara is still not satisfied. Ida Amar Hayom, but if he says outright to the tax collector, the fruits of the world will be ushered to me only today, so the tax collector will know that nothing's really happening. So lo mekavel mine muchas, the tax collector is not going to accept that kind of a neder in order to go away from him and not collect the taxes. The tax collector is going to say, what is that neder worth? You're not really prohibiting anything to yourself. And so the Gemara says, here's really the case of the Mishnah. But Omer belibo hayom, what he's doing is, he's saying in his heart, in his mind, he has in mind that the neder should only apply today. Umodzi b'svasav stam, but when he says it, when he actually says the neder, he just says stam, he says the fruits of the world will be usher to me if these do not belong to the house of the king. And so therefore, in this particular situation, v'afagav desvirala, now even though normally we say, devarim shebelev einan devarim, that which is in his heart doesn't really count for anything, but lagabe onsin shani, when it comes to an onus, it is different. In other words, in this case, we're allowed to take into account what he has in his mind, even though he didn't express it explicitly. And therefore, over here, he says, Yeyasru peiros ha'olam alayim einon shel beis hamelech. The fruits of the world should be ushered to me if this does not belong to the house of the king. And then the fruits actually will be ushered, but just for today, because in his mind, he is thinking today. But of course, the tax collector is not aware of that, and therefore the tax collector accepts his neder and will not collect the money. And the Gemara continues the two dots. The Mishnah said, Beis Shammai omrim b'chol, Beis Shammai omrim b'amesh shehu mediro, uBeis Hillel omrim af b'she'eino mediro. So Beis Shammai say that this only applies, this halach of nidrei onsen only applies to those things which he has to make the neder to the robber, to the tax collector. But Beis Hillel say it applies to the other items as well. Ketzad how so? Amar lo konim ishti nenisli. It tells him to say a konim that my wife shouldn't benefit from me. V'yomar konim ishti uvanai nenenli. And then the person says not only about his wife, but he says my sons also shouldn't benefit from me. Beis Shammai omrim ishto muteris uvanav asur, and Beis Shammai say his wife is mutter, but the children are still asur, because again that wasn't something that was necessary, that was part of the nidrei onsen. Beis Hillel omrim elu v'elu mutar, and Beis Hillel say no, it's all considered nidrei onsen, and his sons are going to be mutter as well. And the Gemara says, Amar Rav Huna says, Tana was taught, Beis Shammai omrim lo yiftach lo b'shvua. Beis Shammai say that he shouldn't offer to take a shvua. It's only if the tax collector makes him take a shvua, or if the robber makes him take a shvua, but he should not offer. Beis Hillel omrim af yiftach lo b'shvua. And Beis Hillel say he can even offer to take the shvua. And so the Gemara now says, Beis Shammai b'shvuhu de lo yiftach lo. It sounds like from this brisa that according to Beis Shammai you can't offer to take a shvua. Ha b'neder yiftach lo, but he can offer to take a neder. Now that's not what our Mishnah said. But in our Mishnah it said, Beis Shammai omrim lo yiftach lo b'neder. It said he can't offer a neder, so therefore it sounds like from the brisa he could offer a neder, and from our Mishnah explicitly he cannot offer a neder. V'suin further, miftachu de lo yiftach lo b'shvua. It sounds like from the brisa he can't offer a shvua. Ha meidar Nadar b'shvua, but if he's not offering, let's say the person's compelling him, so then he could take a shvua and it's considered a shvua sonsin. V'hatanan, but we learned in our Mishnah, Beis Shammai omer b'chol nodrin chutz mi b'shvua, that you can make a neder, but you can't do a shvua. So it sounds like you can't do a shvua at all. And so the Gemara answers, Tona mas nisan b'neder. The Mishnah, the reason why the Mishnah is talking specifically about neder, lahodiacha kochan de Beis Shammai. That's to tell you the strength of Beis Shammai. In other words, we're trying to say, Beis Shammai even say that you're not allowed to be poseach b'neder, lo yiftach lo b'neder. So that's why we learn the Mishnah as talking about neder, because we want to say the strength of Beis Shammai that they even say, lo yiftach lo b'neder. And Tana brisa b'shvua, but the brisa discusses the case of a shvua, lahodiacha kochan de Beis Hillel. That's to say the strength of Beis Hillel that they even permit yiftach lo b'shvua, that you can even offer a shvua. And the Gemara continues with another answer. Rav Ashi says, Hachi katani, here's what it means to say. Beis Shammai omrim, this is talking about the brisa, Beis Shammai omrim ein she'ela b'shvua. Beis Shammai is saying you can't ask a chacham to undo it by a shvua. Beis Hillel omrim yeh she'ela b'shvua, and Beis Hillel say that you're allowed to do she'ela by a shvua, you can undo the shvua. According to Rav Ashi's answer, the brisa is really completely irrelevant, has nothing to do with nidrei onsen. The Mefarish over here explains, Ravashi Amar Hachi Katani Hailo Yiftach the Brisa Lo Mashma Kedamin and Deva Onsen Koi. This Brisa is not even talking about Nidrei Onsen. Ela Hailo Yiftach the Beis Shammai Savi Lo Yiftach Lo HaChacham Pesach Lecharata. What Beis Shammai is saying in the Brisa is that the Chacham was trying to undo the Shvua, so he can't make an opening of regret. Lehi Shoel al Shvua, so De'ein She'ela L'Shvua Lifnei HaChacham. You can't go to a Chacham and ask to undo a Shvua. It has nothing to do, again, with Nidrei Onsen or Shvuas Onsen. It's just a halacha Beis Shammai say there is no Pesach Harata when it comes to Shvu. You can't go to a Chacham. Therefore, there is no question from this Bryce on the Mishnah because it's discussing two separate items completely. And the Gemara continues with the Mishnah, Harei Netios Ha'elu Karbon. Let's say a person says these particular plants are going to be a carbon. And the Mefarish over here says, Amar Harei Netios Ha'elu Karbon, Kalamar Shiu Hektish. In other words, you're declaring these items that they are Hektish, and you say, Im Eino Niktsasos, but they're only Hektish if they are not cut down. Talis zu carbon, and let's say similarly the person says this particular talis is going to be hektish. Imein and nisrefis, if it's not going to burn, if it doesn't burn up, then I'm making it hektish. These netios, if they're not cut down, if they're not destroyed, so to speak, they're going to be hektish. So the Mishnah says yesh len pidyon. The Mishnah says that you can redeem them. These are things that are redeemable. Harei netios ha'elu carbon ad sheyiktasu. Now, let's say the person says these netios are a carbon or are hektish until they are cut, or talis zu carbon, or this talis is a carbon meaning hektish ad shetisarif, until it is burned. And the Mefarish over here says Amar Harei netios ha'elu carbon klamar shiu hektish, again that they are hektish im einon niksasos hayom muki la b'gemara. The Gemara says that what we mean to say is if today they don't get cut down. That's how the Gemara understands it. V'yavar hayom v'lo niksasu, and the day actually passes and they don't get cut down, so therefore it should take effect. V'lo nisra talis, the talis doesn't get burned. Harei hein hektish. So the Mishnah is saying they do in fact become hektish because they were not cut down, it was not burned, and therefore it's hektish. V'yesh len pidyon. And the idea of the Mishnah is that you can then redeem the hektish. You take this item and you redeem it, meaning v'hadamim yichnasu lahektish, the money, you take the holiness from the item, from the talis, from the netios, and you put it onto damim, you put it onto money, v'heim yatzu l'chulin. And then these particular items, they are going to go l'chulin. They will no longer be hektish, and we'll continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Chav Ches Amud Beis.